views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Coming up on this edition of Perspectives, we shift our conversation to sports. The NCAA has approved a temporary policy to allow college athletes to get paid after a Supreme Court ruling. Plus, as the Tokyo Olympics draw near, we weigh in on raising track star Sha'Carri Richardson's drug test and her suspension. Also, banning swim caps designed for swimmers with natural hair at the Tokyo Olympics. The question is, what is behind this controversial policy? And it's given by the International Swimming Federation. We're going to discuss this plus a whole lot more on this edition of Perspectives with yours truly, Daren Jaime.
What's on your mind? Express what's on your mind. What's on your mind?
Anything relevant to life, you bring it to the table. Whether you make a move solo or a movement with a stable. No fables, you speak on your decisions. Cause in the long run, it's your voice, your views, your vision. Keeping it real with many messages for you to know. This ain't radio, but DJ runs the show. Entertainment, he rocks it. Politics, he locks it. The host with the most would handle any topic. Don't forget to share your perspective with shines of light. Cause it might make a difference in someone else's life.
Make a difference in someone's life. Express what's in your heart and your mind. Share your perspective.
What's your perspective? Let them know.
And hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Perspectives. I am Daren Jaime, and of course, we thank you for joining us. Now, as always, you can watch Perspectives here on BronxNet's Channel 67. If you have the website, bronxnet.org, all of our social media platforms are BronxNet TV. Now, if you're trying to reach me personally on Facebook, you can go to Daren C. Jaime. That's my professional page on Facebook. And then Instagram and Twitter at DCJaime23. Of course, you can find information as well as some inspiration. Well, coming up, we do go front and center with the issue of sports on today's show. We talk about the Supreme Court unanimously voting against the NCAA, saying that the association cannot limit education-related benefits for student athletes as a means of protecting their amateur status. Now, in his opinion, Justice Brett Kavanaugh wrote, the NCAA's business model would be flatly illegal in almost any other industry in America. Many people saying a major win for college athletes. Now, joining me to share her opinion on this is former basketball player, actress, as well as tech entrepreneur, Niesha Butler. Niesha has an extensive career in sports. She played professionally in the WNBA and overseas and was a sideline reporter for the Atlanta Hawks. She is currently a president and founder of Ballin Technology, a not-for-profit that connects sports and technology for student athletes. And Niesha, good to have you here with us here.
Thanks for having me.
Again, and glad. And I mean, listen, we got you at a time where a whole lot is going on, so we're going to try to get a whole lot in a little bit of time. But let's talk about this here. First of all, the NCAA, the judges rule, the Supreme Court rules that the NCAA players can actually be compensated. A landmark ruling, but not everybody's happy. Your take on this?
Well, we have a lot more to go. I mean, it's the first step. Name, images, and license is still not an example. When I was playing, would have still allowed me to take the lead role in Love and Basketball. So I think it's a first step, and I mean it's something that's long overdue. And I hope these kids get every penny and every drop that they can get. But I mean, it's hilarious that it was from Brett Kavanaugh. But I do believe that it's a step in the right direction. So, you know, I mean, we'll see how this works. I do like that it's in all three divisions, Division I, Division II, Division III. And especially for female athletes, I think this would really help a lot because just playing the way we played for an education is not enough, especially when there's billions of dollars being made on the backs of these athletes. So it's a good
yeah, and I think we saw a lot of that in the NCAA tournament when they showed the picture of a women's locker room compared to a men's locker room. Right. And it was honestly disgraceful. But right. Give us a little bit of a walkthrough and a perspective from what are some of the common challenges that women athletes face that maybe men don't, that we should become more aware of?
Well, I mean, the cool thing about this is that I think it's going to actually help women in the sense that women spend money and there are more products that they can endorse than actually men. So having women the ability to lend out their image and likeness for products which regular women buy, I think is really, really going to help women's sports that people are not talking about. Like, you don't necessarily have to be, playing for UConn in order to endorse any kind of product for a woman. And there are just more products out there between face creams, sports bras, skirts, et cetera, that are specifically for women. So that's a good point. The second thing is, I feel like the NCAA has a lot of holes, one of which is sex disparity and giving money to different things. So that's has been a long time coming. I do believe the next step is allowing them to do other things such as acting, which is big, whether that's reporting, whatever it is that female athletes and male athletes can take advantage of is going to be really important moving forward.
Yeah, when we talk about this, think about the NCAA, a big time business. We know that when particularly college basketball, the NCAA playoffs come, that's huge money that goes not just towards the NCAA, but goes to these educational institutions. It seems as though everybody profits off the athlete. They say, okay, we give you a scholarship, but that scholarship compared to the millions of dollars that the university makes doesn't even pale in comparison. So there is this huge financial discrepancy between what a student athlete gets and what the university makes, what the NCAA makes. And honestly, this is definitely long overdue.
Yeah, and I just want to make it, and what it's worth. Right. So they keep selling this thing about education is worth, is priceless. But that's not actually true, because I remember my issue with the NCAA, Love and Basketball was going to pay me $150,000 to do the lead role. And at that point in time, Georgia Tech, being a state university, was about $17,000 a year. So roughly do the math, 4 years, even if I did graduate school, would have been less than what I've gotten paid. So in addition to the money, which another thing I want to point out, now that I have my own nonprofit, a nonprofit is literally supposed to have a vision statement to uplift and help and do something for the public, not make billions of dollars off of kids. Like, I don't remember in any of the paperwork that I had to fill out that would be a good thing to do. So you always have to say, how much is the actual education's worth? And I always say that the average salary for college graduates in America is around approximately $45,000. So that education is not priceless. It actually has a specific amount of money, and anything that's worth $45,000 is more and is beneficial for these athletes, by which you can always go back to school, depending, of course, the school, because Georgia Tech versus Harvard, I think, is like $95,000 a year. But I think it's also to really understand what specifically is an education worth, is dollars and cents. So.
Yeah, and when you think about it, I mean, you look at the dollars and you look at the cents, and yeah, it just doesn't really even add up. But I want you to take us back to what you said earlier. I think our viewers may have overlooked. So you had the opportunity to actually do Love and Basketball. Yeah.
So Spike Lee is a basketball fan, women's and men's, and he knew me when I was a kid. So he knew that I went to Georgia Tech, and I was on spring break my freshman year with my teammates. And the funny story is that because I was the New York girl, the seniors used to always prank me by famous, New Yorkers. So when I got the call from Spike, I ran in my room. We were on spring break having a lot of fun. And he was like, hey, Nish, and the way he said it, hey, Nish, this is Spike. Yo, we got a script downstairs for you, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, okay, guys, sure. And I hung up the phone to him. And he called right back. And I hung up the phone to him again. And so I left, and we were partying, and I come back, and my mom blew up my phone. Like, it was crazy. And my mom's like, you hung up on Spike Lee? What's wrong with you? Like, you have a flight in like 3 hours. They sent me the script, had me read it on the plane, flew me out that night. And I auditioned for the director, Gina Prince Bridlewood. Then I flew back out about, 7 times, 10 times, I don't remember, quite a few times to audition for the producers, audition for the director. Then we had the screen test with Omar and I. Then we had another screen test, and then I got an acting coach in Atlanta and in California. And then they were trying to work with me to figure it out. What happened was, long story short, is that they were going to figure out the payment through per diem. We were going to get around that through the payment. The problem was I wouldn't be allowed to do the press. And that was the last straw for, the Love and Basketball Group, because how can I be the lead role and not being able to do press? And the NCAA said, because it was a basketball movie and because I was an amateur, I wouldn't be able to do that. And that was an issue. And I had to not take the movie. So, yeah. And I mean, we knew it was a hit when we read it. I mean, it's a great script. Gina Pispardo is an athlete. So she wrote a female athlete intimately very well. And it's something that, anytime I talk about this, here's the reason why I'm mad, right? Like, it's the opportunity that they prevented a kid from having is what gets me, right? Like, everybody has their road in life. Like, I can't say I wish no. The fact that there was some governing body, which is school that it was worth a scholarship, $17,000, mind you, $17,000, that they prevented a young lady who was eligible, who gave a lot to her school. I was rookie of the year. I led the league in scoring. They prevented me from doing an opportunity at the most prime time in my life for what? And mind you, the next year, my coach got fired, or 2 years after that, and was able to go about her business. No problems, no issues. So this is this issue. This is the thing we're having, that why would that's such a ridiculous rule for what? Like, I could have done it. They changed it. The filming would have been done in the summer. Right. So I wouldn't have missed school. I wouldn't have missed anything. I wouldn't have missed games, nothing. But they prevented an opportunity for me having, for what? Right. So this is the issue that I feel like we just have to keep fighting to overturn. So
one word for that, whack. I mean, there's a whole lot of adjectives that we can use, but we'll just leave it at whack because this is public television.
Sure.
All right, listen, go take a quick break. Come back with Niesha in a few minutes. Coming up after the break, we go to Tokyo, talking about the Olympics. The Olympics, the ban that's going on with regards to headwear in swimming, and then also Sha'Carri Richardson, an update. We'll talk about that when we return here on Perspectives. And we're back here on Perspectives. Daren Jaime here with you. Our guest today, Niesha Butler. We're talking sports, talking about the controversies and the recent ruling by the Supreme Court allowing athletes to get paid. We turn our attention now to Tokyo, and we also know that the International Swimming Federation came out with the decision banning swim caps designed for swimmers with natural hair at the upcoming Tokyo Olympics. What does that mean for particularly those in communities of color, Black and brown? Well, that means you can't wear a cap that's designed to fit your head. And Niesha, it doesn't get more mind-boggling than this. Racism at its best?
Or its worst. Yeah. I mean, how are you supposed to put hair like natural hair under a swim cap? And the ruling was handed down because they said the natural shape of your head, which I, being a woman of color, I don't understand that. But not, forget understanding, because we're all adults and we all can read and we all can just reach out to a Black friend and just talk to them and say, hey, is this the natural shape of your head? How does this work? Like, this is such a simple remedy that they just don't care enough. And, the fact that there are Black swimmers doing very well right now, I think we just have to keep doing that and keep overflooding them so they're forced to listen. I do believe that, there's a difference between ignorance and racism. Well, maybe they're not mutually exclusive, but I do believe that maybe this is a problem or a prime example of just not being any Black people or diversity in the room. So, I just feel like there's a couple of people in there. It's like, well, it's not the shape of my head. It's not the shape of my daughter's head. It's not the shape of my wife's head. So, maybe it's not the shape of it. That could be an explanation, but this goes back to the diversity problem. Like there's a lot of things that are insensitive that happens or that are flat out wrong because there's no perspective in the room being voiced. So I think that it's a problem now because there have been Black people with the same shaped heads for the last, I don't know, a long time. It's a problem now because we're winning and they're being represented, and now it's a force to be reckoned with. So I think it's horrible, but I also think that it's something that the more of us are in these competitions, the more they'll have to figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's incredible that you get to a place where you talk about swim caps and say it's illegal. I can see if somebody says, well, this is something that gives an athlete an undue advantage against somebody else. But we're talking about swimming caps, for crying out loud. And there is no undue advantage. All this is absolutely, as you would say, there is probably some ignorance in the room. But I also believe that there's some contrived racism because we do see African-American swimmers on the rise, winning medals, taking their rightful place as anybody else. And it's almost like when an athlete of African American or of descent of color begins to hit the scene, all of a sudden we see additional roadblocks in order to make things just a little bit more worse for them to be able to have to cross another hurdle. It's a hurdle just to get to the doggone Olympics. Right. It's a hurdle just to get to that level. And then to have a body sanction and come out with some whack, is the word of the day, ruling is this. It just definitely is like, it makes you scratch your head.
Well, it's devastating. I mean, women's bodies have been, kind of scrutinized and put sanctions on for a while now in every aspect of American life. But this, I think, is horrible because there's just not a lot of representation. And this is not inviting. And Olympics is supposed to be something that includes all countries, all races. And this is something that specifically excludes women of color to being comfortable and to being welcome. So that definitely something they need to change.
Yeah. I want to move to Sha'Carri Richardson for a minute. We know now that she will not be making it to the Olympics, not because of the International Federation, but literally because of the U.S. team deciding not to allow her to compete in the upcoming Olympics, this following a positive test for marijuana. Now, the fact of the matter is she acknowledged the fact that she smoked marijuana. She received a 30-day suspension, but at the end of that 30-day suspension, she would become eligible to actually run in the relay. She couldn't run in the 100-meter, but she would be eligible to run in the relays. But the United States deciding not to send her to Tokyo. This is a statement that was made, quote, while USATF fully agrees that the merit of the World Anti-Doping Agency rules related to THC should be reevaluated, it would be detrimental to the integrity of the U.S. Olympic team trials for track and field if USATF amended its policies following competition only weeks before the Olympic Games. Now, this is according to a statement that was made by the time that we went on air shortly after the suspension. I want to get your take on this here because I agree, rules are rules, and if you broke the rules, you ought to pay the price. But if somebody has already upheld their suspension and they've done their suspension, why not allow her to at least compete in the relays?
This is so stupid for so many reasons. But the first one is weed leaves your system, whether a few hours or a day or so. And definitely in a month. I'm no doctor, but I definitely know. Second of all, it's not a performance-enhancing drug. Third of all, it would have been before the suspension. So and what is integrity? To me, integrity is a person that makes a mistake, owns up to the mistakes, and just rights her wrong. That is an example of integrity. Integrity is not something that for no reason, because again, I do agree with she broke the rules, fine, accept the suspension and keep it moving. I don't understand. No, I do understand it's racist, it's not cool, and it's not an example of integrity. For banning her for the 4x1 relay is absolutely absurd. But also from a money standpoint, from a fan standpoint, like I'm just not understanding with how that conversation in that room went. So listen, our biggest let's think about if Jordan did this, right? We've heard of the Jordan rules, right? Like let's figure something out to make Jordan compete. Let's figure something out, to have to work it out, to massage this so that it makes sense. And I just feel like they're doing this young lady a disservice. They're doing America a disservice. For what reason? Like
Right. And that's what I'm saying. You said it right there. Let's talk Michael Jordan or basketball, right? Let's talk baseball. Let's talk any sport whatsoever.
Right.
If a player is suspended for X amount of time, after that suspension, that player becomes eligible to play.
Right.
Basketball, football, hockey,
Right.
you know, any sport after suspension,
Right.
you become eligible.
Right.
But here's the case. She would become eligible, but the United States says, we're still not bringing you over to Tokyo. That's the biggest hypocrisy for me.
Right.
I understand rules. I understand you got to suspend somebody. I understand that you have to do what you have to do.
Right.
Rules are rules. Okay, great. Now that the rules have been done with, now that the law has been applied, and now that you're in that period, how do you not? And for a woman of her situation, let's talk. I mean, she talked about smoking marijuana, and I'm not using it as an excuse, but let's look at the situation. Her mother died. She was in the middle of grief. She was going through something. And here it is, this insensitivity, if you will, towards that, because the suspension is over.
Yeah, it's just, again, it's so wrong on so many levels. First of all, I just feel like they don't want to win is the first point. And I'm not understanding this, but under those circumstances, in a legal state, which she did it, where the charges are being held, she broke no like actual laws. And I don't, when they say integrity, the American way is you do a crime or you have an infraction, you pay your dues and you keep it moving. That's integrity of our system. That is stood up time and time again. So she would have paid her debt and then she's being punished again. And this young lady, I know as an athlete, you can't say that she's young and she'll just compete and she'll be fine because injuries can happen, life circumstances will happen. But for them to do this, there's no reason to prevent this young lady from running. So it's just a tragedy and it's not even like redemption. Like this is not even a redemption story. This is just a tragedy for no reason. We're talking about for a non-performance enhancement drug, whereas they have other competitions where transgenders are running with high levels of testosterone, and that is clearly performance enhancing. And that clearly stretches the fabric of the integrity of running against women. So I just don't understand how they are preventing a natural born woman without any performance enhancement or any extra testosterone, whatever, from competing, whereas in the same Olympics, that's not the case for other events. Like that's that's confusing to me. Like
and I gotta throw the break, but I'll say this before I go to break. In essence, what it really boils down to is you're penalizing her twice.
Yeah,
and that's the unfair.
Right.
You penalize her once, that's because she had to. Now you penalize her again when she has the opportunity and you don't let her go. That's the unfair part. Let me take a quick break, come back. Got more to talk about. Niesha's got the answers. We just got to get it from her. So stay with us. We'll be right back here on Perspective. Back here on Perspectives, our guest, Niesha Butler. We are talking sports. And Niesha, big controversy. Rachel Nichols has been removed from the 2021 NBA Finals after comments and leaked audio on ESPN talking about Maria Taylor, talking about really the issue of diversity. And we can talk a whole lot about the leaked audio and all of that, but give me a perspective, if you will, about women in media. I mean, honestly, you worked on the sidelines for the Atlanta Hawks, African-American woman working the sidelines. Not always that common to see an African-American woman on the sidelines and really taking their rightful place in sports media. So your thoughts?
Well, I would liken it to the argument or the issues of affirmative action, right? Like there's a lot of times that when you say the word affirmative action, you actually think Black and Black people. When actual numbers, white women are the number one by far beneficiary of something like affirmative action. And this is kind of something that I know firsthand how that feels when there are 30 NBA basketball teams, and I think one of which have a Black sideline reporter or two. And the teams are majority Black, and they're just not jobs. It is not even equal. It's not even close to having some kind of equality on that stage. So I know firsthand, being one of the very few in a sea of white women, how there really isn't representation at all. Rachel Nichols, I totally see as a woman where she's coming from, and I completely understand how. I mean, the fact of the matter is, Maria Taylor is coming for everybody, right? Like, the woman is, she is Black, and she is talented, and she is nice, and she's an athlete, which I don't think Rachel Nichols is, and she's young, and she's beautiful, and she's coming for everybody's job. I understand Rachel Nichols saying, okay, ESPN does have a horrible track record of diversity and just treatment of Black people anyway. So I think when what she said, I can't be in her mind. I do understand Maria. I mean, she was, I think, a while ago criticized for, something she dressed. I think she showed the shoulder or something. She has been scrutinized and so much pressure, and this woman keeps battling back. My view is, yeah, there's a problem. She should have her job. To be completely honest, not necessarily because she's Black, because she's just better. She's nice. She's awesome. And I do understand the fact that, the fact of the matter is, if ESPN really wanted to do something about the diversity problem, they wouldn't swap in a woman with another woman because there are a plethora of jobs that are given to men. There's a plethora of jobs that are not given to Black men, especially Black women don't have many seats at their table. So yeah, I mean, it's an issue that we have, and I do, to a certain extent, I like what they did. I mean, my thing is, it's unfortunate that it took a leaked audio, right, to actually have Maria up for that job anyway. Like, that's kind of a weird thing. Like, it has to be some kind of random, life altering thing, which again, I think this is I'm against personal conversations being used against you, but why did that have to happen for us to talk about Maria Taylor being a huge integral part of ESPN when she's been paying her dues for a long time? I think there's room for Maria Taylor and Rachel Nichols because they're both women and they both are good. I just think that it's a shame that we had to get to this point, that there's a woman that feels threatened, not by another man, not by, but another Black woman who's a rising star. So, Maria, keep shining, girlfriend. And, it is what it is. I think Rachel Nichols will be okay.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we're out of time. I didn't even get to talk about Mendelsohn, the fact that the PR person for LeBron James, says that he's tired of Black Lives Matter and he's exhausted by all of that. We're going to see how long he has a job working for LeBron James and what that really will turn out to be. We'll find out more about that, but I'm sure, stay tuned, there will be more to come on that. Niesha, thank you so much for being with us here on Perspectives. Great conversation. Got to have you back.
Anytime, guys. I love you guys.
All righty. Niesha Butler, our guest here on Perspectives. Got to wrap it up, but listen, a lot to contend with. I think we talked a little bit about ignorance, racism, and bias. And the fact of the matter is, we all have a little bit of that in each of us. Ignorance. Some of us say I'm not racist, but some of the things that we do can really borderline on being a racist, and bias. The fact of the matter is, you have to check it. And if you check it, you become a better person. Unfortunately, sometimes we don't learn until after making the mistake. I'm Daren Jaime. You've been watching Perspectives. Stay tuned. Guess what? We're coming up with another show next week. Peace and God bless.
Anything relevant to life, you bring it to the table. Whether you make a move solo or a movement with a stable. No fables, you speak on your decisions. Cause in the long run, it's your voice, your views, your vision. Keeping it real with many messages for you to know.